Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Guys, we are back with Gary Eastridge of CCW Safe. The last time we chatted with you, if you're watching this in sequential order, we kind of covered a myriad of topics. Today we're going to dig into a number of things, maybe 10 things. 10
of the top things that we
10 suggest. Top things that you need to know as an armed person, a lawfully armed person, that you need to know if you get involved in a self-defense situation. Is that a good way to?
Yes.
All right. So how'd you guys arrive at this number?
Well, collectively, I think with our law enforcement experience and having the business in operation for 12 years now, we've refined those and found the things that are more important. We released this in a social media outlet or a social media post, I think about 6 or 8 months ago. All of our old social media can be found by going to our website and searching in the news section.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to go into it in exact order, it is available on the website.
Very cool. We do a series called Must Have Skills. Mm-hmm. Those things could be anything from how to draw a pistol to how to observe your surroundings to how to be nice when you don't want to be nice. So these are kind of like Gary's must-have skills post-traumatic event.
Yeah, and as we've discussed before, it's part of that preparation. It's part of this. I've heard a lot of people call about your toolkit.
Okay.
You know, the different things you have available to use, and being prepared for the sequence of events that's going to occur immediately following an incident can be very critical.
All right, let's just walk down that path. So an individual's a lawful armed citizen, is involved in some type of incident, and I guess all of this is kind of tied around is it the use of force with a gun or any type of deadly force?
It could be any, keeping in mind that self-defense is a affirmative defense to what would otherwise be a crime. You can't use force against somebody except under certain conditions, one of which is self-defense.
Okay.
So the more serious the incident, the more serious the injuries are, potentially up to death, the more important it is to walk that. It's almost like walking a balance beam.
Okay.
Because you want to be cooperative, you want to take care of yourself, you want to protect your rights, but you also want to give law enforcement enough to understand that you are the victim.
Okay. So we've got an individual, he or she is involved in some type of encounter. How's this list work?
Well, it's just a list that's kind of in a sequential order of how things should transpire.
Lay it on me.
Number one, make sure you're safe.
Okay.
Make sure anyone you're with is safe. What that means is make sure that threat's gone.
So I don't have some duty to sit there and call 911 while people are trying to kill me.
No, absolutely not. The threat is the most pressing issue, and you have to make sure that threat has passed before you call 911, which would be the second thing to do.
Call the authorities.
Yeah, and we suggest and we emphasize be the first to call 911. We discussed previously that in law enforcement, the person who calls first is generally treated as the victim. So you want to call as soon as you've made sure you're safe.
Don't violate Rule 1 to do Rule 2.
Exactly. And then with Rule 2, be the first to call 911. There's some potential pitfalls there.
Okay.
A dispatcher's job is to keep you on the phone. That is part of their training. They may even order you to stay on the phone. It's important to get enough information to that dispatcher that the officers have a basic understanding of what's transpired. But what you don't want to do immediately after a probably the most stressful event you've ever experienced is stay on the phone and just free think, free speak.
I've heard some people say in this space to do whatever you got to do. My name's Mickey. I'm at this address. I'm dressed like this. I was just involved in a self-defense encounter. The bad man is over there. I'm armed. When the police arrive, I'm going to put my whole gun in the holster. Yeah. And then they say, put your phone on speaker and just like set it in the open space. Yeah. Like, that's not what we're talking about.
That's one way you could handle it. Okay. The negative of that is when you've been under an extremely stressful or been in an extremely stressful situation, frequently you may be somewhat dazed, especially if you're injured. You may keeping your consciousness of thought, being able to articulate what happened. If you just let that phone line be live and you're going, I can't
Holy crap, I can't believe this just happened. And so if somebody, you just might say something inadvertent with no malice that could just be misconstrued.
Exactly. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen in law enforcement.
What do you think? So you're a cop, if go back in time 15, 20 years, somebody said, hey man, I got a buddy that does this thing where they help people if they get involved in self-defense. And they said, once you communicate with 911, kind of like end the call, what would you say, like, as a policeman? I'm only asking this because I'm wondering, I always thought, like, man, you can't hang up on these guys. Like, then they might think I'm doing something crazy. Or...
You have a duty to notify law enforcement, to call emergency, to call 911. You don't have a duty to stay on the phone.
Okay.
Your Fifth Amendment right still applies when you're talking on the phone. But keep in mind, anything said to a 911 dispatcher, you're not in custody, so it is admissible in court. So if you're injured and you're spewing expletives and that sort of thing, that might give a jury 2 years down the road. Yeah, listen to this guy. He's ranting and raving. And in fact, we know that you've got that adrenaline dump and you're just talking to talk.
So what's the third point then? So
third point, initiate the emergency response, which is joined with number 2.
So secure our safety, notify law enforcement, give them the general details of what's happening, and then initiate
the emergency response. And by that, you're wanting to give the 911 dispatcher enough information that they can be prepared.
I interviewed a dude. He's a FedEx, UPS driver, doesn't matter. He's a delivery driver. He's doing Christmas time deliveries, got headphones on, goes up to a door, turns around, guy's got a gun in his guts. And he's like, I knew he was going to shoot me. He's like, I don't know how, but I just knew. He told me, come to the alley. He's armed, concealed, and he's telling the guy, take my phone, take my wallet. I got, let me just go back to my truck. Don't shoot me. He hands the guy his stuff, and the dude shoots him right in the guts. He draws, shoots the guy. He's shot through some organs, through and through, makes his way back to the truck, calls 911, super smooth. This is my name, this is where I am, I'm in this white or brown truck, I'm gonna pull into this church parking lot, I've got direct pressure on the wound, I can't see what's going on in the back. He used the seatbelt to tighten it around himself. He's like, I'm gonna hang up with you now because I'm gonna call my wife. Calls his wife, says, hey babe, I got hurt at work, I'm okay, I'm gonna be going to the hospital, and he just tells her which hospital because he knew there were 2 and one is not where he wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And then they show up, they get him loaded up, and they want to take him to the hospital he doesn't want to go to. He forces him to take him to the good hospital. His wife doesn't know he's been shot. And he lived, and everything worked perfectly, but I think that scenario, he was and I heard some of the dispatch. I mean, he was talking super calm and collected, like he'd thought about it. Maybe he did. Maybe he was just the kind of guy that was calm like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely in a situation doable because I've heard somebody do it.
And that's why I would say probably 40 to 50% of our calls are made by third parties. A friend, a family member, a wife.
To
a
you
child.
guys?
To us.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep yourself safe. Call 911. Give them all the pertinent information,
Yes.
but really no more, because we are concerned that a person could be in a weak state of mind and just blabbers on and creates a dialogue that's now recorded that could be used against you.
Yes.
So how do we break that call with 911?
I would just hang up. And then I would call CC.
So you wouldn't say, thank you for your time, I'm going to be waiting here. You just...
No, just end it.
Okay.
It's really that simple. And then call your loved ones, your CCW Safe. I've always recommend members give the CCW Safe emergency number to their loved ones.
Makes good sense
to
to me.
adult children, to spouse, to a best friend, whoever, and then just call and say, hey, I've been involved in an incident. I can't talk right now. Call CCW Safe for me.
Tell them where you're
I'm
at.
injured, I'm safe. Where you're at if you want.
I mean, you got to kind of know, because if I call you, I'm in Oklahoma today. Yesterday I was in Ohio. The week before that I was in Washington. So like, yeah, you're hurt, or I call these guys and you're gonna be like, where is he?
Yeah, we had a member's friend call in for a member who was in jail in Mexico.
Oh wow.
So yeah, you know, it's a lot of it's going to be depend on the circumstances, the actual what is going on right then. If the other reason to break contact is, what if there's another subject you're not aware of, and your focus is on talking to the 911 and instead of scanning for
You mean an
additional
actual threat?
an additional threat. Yeah.
Okay, so 1, we've got nailed. 2, we've got nailed. 3 is the contact CCW Safe and or family.
Yeah. And then prepare for the responding officers.
That's 4.
That's 4. That's where the situation, the location, the geographic location, you know, if you're on a street, you know, they're going to be coming from one of the two directions. So you get into a position to where you can see both directions. You see the police car flying up, you put the gun down and you get your hands in the air. You don't want to be, as we know, we've seen defenders shot by law enforcement because they had their gun in their hand.
Put the gun back on you, unload the gun.
I would either holster it or lay it in a position where it can be seen by law enforcement. Have your hands up, and then as the officers are telling you, get on the ground, whatever, say, yes, sir, my gun is on the ground here. My gun's on the fender of that car there. My gun's in my holster on my right hip, keeping your hands in plain sight.
Okay, so that's 4.
4, provide initial information. This is, in law enforcement, they do what's called a public safety interview.
Okay.
That's where they don't go into in-depth details, excuse me. They don't go into in-depth details, but you say, hey, I was attacked. There were 2 of them. This one, I had to use force. The other one ran. He's wearing, you know, whatever. Give a clothing description, a description of the subject. If you don't provide that, law enforcement has no way to know that there was actually 2 attackers instead of 1. Then the next step is actually to identify the case elements to the officers. And that's kind of an extension of the previous point, and that's to establish that they were armed. You know, there may be evidence that you're aware of that the officers may not, and it may be in a position, if it's in a roadway, where it could be disturbed by responding officers or passing traffic. He threw a knife over there. There's shell casings over there. But again, it's a balancing act, because once you get to talking, it's hard to stop talking. So you have to balance that with not just freely speaking.
That seems difficult.
It is.
Especially
it's extremely
when you don't
difficult.
practice it, most people never have this happen, and those that do, it happens once in their life.
My dad had one of my favorite sayings that I've used giving this presentation before, that under stress, you develop diarrhea of the mouth and constipation of the brain. The mouth's working, but the brain isn't. You don't want to just start talking when you're mentally not in a position to answer in-depth questions, or you can get caught up in that telling the story, and the next thing you know, you've told everything based on what you recall
In a highly emotional,
highly stressful state. Again, this is one of the reasons law enforcement, it's pretty standard that they're not interviewed or talked to beyond a public safety interview for 2 days. That's take the time to decompress, to have accurate memories. Steve Maddox, for example.
Cycles is like the term I've heard.
I've heard 2. I've heard 48 hours.
Okay.
I don't think it's a hard, fast rule. It's just you have to give yourself the time to process what has happened. Our case was Steve Maddox. Steve was trying to be very helpful with law enforcement. He told them a couple things that were really had no material bearing on the case, but they were inaccurate. He told them that he had a daughter in college. I asked him where, and he said at the college that his wife went to instead of the college his daughter was going to.
So then did they look at it like he was lying?
Well, I think it caused question. It caused them, and unfortunately, law enforcement, when you go into it, you go into it with a suspicious kind of attitude, and if you start seeing discrepancies, it can change the perspective of the responding officers and especially the investigating officers, which will follow up after the responding officers.
So what are we on, 6?
6 was to identify the case elements.
Okay.
7 is inform officers of injuries. I don't care how minor the injury is. Tell the officer, I'm hurt, he kicked me, he hit me, whatever. They're keeping in mind you don't want to just open that free flow, but establish that you're injured. The more serious, the more important, of course.
That's an interesting one for me, this concept that we keep coming back to of not just opening the gate. As a person that enjoys conversation, it's, tell me more, tell me more,
Yeah.
tell me more. And
I was, as a homicide investigator, I spent my last 7 years with the police department in the homicide unit. I loved the guys that would just open up and start talking, because I flipped the recorder on and sit and let them talk. And every once in a while, that person will go into areas they shouldn't go into. It's real easy to do when you're under stress. And I forgot to mention also, when you call 911, make sure that if there's an injury, you articulate that so they can get first responders, medical aid, that sort of thing.
so I believe back at point 2, when we contact 911, we want to let them know
Yes.
that we need EMS out there.
Yes, that we need medical response as well.
And that might not just be for us.
No, it could be for the attacker.
Yeah.
You don't want to say, yeah, he's laying over there bleeding or something like that. You need to be a compassionate human being, even though somebody's tried to attack you. There's a lot of debate on the internet over whether you render aid to your attacker. That's a difficult one. It would be very situationally oriented for me. If I was confident that person posed no threat, I would attempt to render aid. I'm not saying that you should or should not do it. I'm saying that's what I would do. If I had the least doubt about whether they were a threat or not, I wouldn't do it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we had an incident here in Oklahoma City where law enforcement shot a victim of a robbery. The victim was shooting at the robbers when an officer rounded a corner. They said, "Show me your hand," and the person turned because he had actually taken a round in the hand, and as he turned, it looked like he was in a combat stance, and they fired and shot him. They're under the thought that he is the attacker. They handcuff him and leave him lay on the sidewalk. And watching the body camera, they call for an EMS, they call for the fire department, but it almost appeared callous as he's laying there bleeding. They're starting their reports.
Is he verbal?
He's not verbal at that point.
So he can't tell them I'm the good guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it took, and it was established fairly quick, but it took a little bit of time before they established that he was actually the victim.
How did that work out for that individual?
He lived. He was severely injured. The suspects were both caught, prosecuted, sent to the penitentiary. But he's got permanent injury.
And that's a law enforcement responder versus a
civilian
regular
yes.
citizen out there in public. But even in that situation, does a cop have a duty to render aid?
You have a duty to render aid, but there are some exceptions. I had basic first aid in the police academy in 1979. Am I going to go try to do CPR or something? I got more first aid training from your S12 event than I had in my entire law enforcement career.
I believe that. Yeah.
So you also have to, before you make that decision, you have to make sure you're capable of rendering aid.
Right.
Because you can make a situation worse.
So that was 7?
7. 8, you're a victim, act like one. That's real simple.
And I want to make sure we're not saying act as in be an actor.
No.
You're saying you're a victim, be one. Don't be walking around going, I shot that bitch.
High-fiving.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is something law enforcement you see frequently. You've survived an armed encounter. You've just taken down somebody trying to kill you. Your colleagues show up, and it's good job, man. Good job.
So this kind of goes back to the beginning where we break that call off because the same thing could be happening.
Yes. And what you have to, I've had the news media beat me to scenes before. Arrive at scenes. At one point, I thought one of the local news crews had an insider at the police department because they were there every time I got there.
Wow.
If somebody, and nowadays everybody has a camera right there on their phone. If right after an incident, first thing everybody does is start video, and you're over there with your friend or your wife, and you're high-fiving or saying, yeah, I got him, I did it, and that sort of thing, it can change the perspective of the responding officers.
Makes good sense.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things you have to be aware of, especially in today's society. There's a camera on almost every building. Everybody has a camera. So the potential that if the whole incident isn't captured on video, the aftermath of the incident may well be, and it doesn't give you a full and accurate representation of what's transpired.
Okay.
Number 9, control the information about the incident. Get off social media. Don't be making statements. The news media will come up, and especially if they get there before officers, they'll come up and ask you what happened.
My name's Jim Bob, and I shot that man over there when he come out of that store.
And I've seen incidents such as that. Your interest at that point is taking care of yourself. You control the information by limiting what information you put out there. Immediately after the incident, you may be released. If you're released and you go home, social media is a huge thing nowadays. Shut that down. Shut it off. Don't get on. If you get calls from friends, hey, what happened? Hey, I can't talk about it right now. It was terrible. I'll talk to you about it when the time is right. But control the information that's going out.
That makes good sense. But it's hard. And everybody's like, hey, am I supposed to talk about this? But I will tell you. And next thing you know, everybody's got a backstory.
In my personal incident, it was an on-duty shooting. And the two things that bothered me the most were calling my loved ones and telling them I just took a human life, and then having fellow officers, good intention, come up and slap me on the back and say, good job, man, good job. Well, I shot an armed robber who was trying to kill me and my partner. And God damn it.
Damn ass fly. Oklahoma flies.
I shot an armed robber who was trying to kill me and my partner. But I felt really conflicted, especially immediately after, when people were telling me I did a good job. Now, let's say that the news media is filming through the window or out on the street, and you're all over there with your buddies patting each other on the back. It has a bad optic. Number 10, provide identifying information only. This is probably should be moved up on the list, but this is so you give your name, your address, your phone number, and then you tell the officer, I want to talk, but I want to do it once I have my representation.
We're assuming at this point they've already got a framework of what happened because of the 911 call. We've communicated with them when they've come on scene. So
beyond that,
nothing else. You guys have had enough members have issues. How often is somebody being too chatty a problem?
We have had it happen several times.
Okay.
And some of the times it's not harmful. But as I tell everybody, you can't unsay something you've said.
Sure.
Once it's documented, once it's been said, and you own it.
How you say it is
how you say it.
And you, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I might just be scared, but you perceive it that he was being belligerent.
Yeah.
Or I might be belligerent and you might perceive it as something else. And so how we behave will be remembered too.
And I have talked to members. We had a member involved in an incident last year, a lethal incident, and the member was when we would talk, he was very calm, but the more you talk, the more, I hate to say excited, because I don't believe it was excitement.
It wasn't like pleasure.
It was almost a manic. And then he would, once he started talking, he couldn't stop. So, it's when I respond as an officer, I'm taking all these little things, verbal and nonverbal clues from what you're doing, how you're acting, and I'm making an assessment. The Steve Maddox case. Steve was taken down to the interview room. He was left in the interview room while they finished processing the scene. During that 2 hours, it might have been 2.5 hour time, Steve is sitting absolutely motionless. Now, for those of us who have been through a critical incident, you know that you get an adrenaline dump, and then as that adrenaline bleeds off, that threat's gone, you get absolutely exhausted, physically, emotionally, and it's like doing a real hard workout, and after you've cooled down, all you want to do is sit down. And the officers put in their report how calm he was and how there was no show of fear. There was no show of
So
remorse.
they're kind of painting a picture like he's cold-blooded or something like that.
Exactly.
Calculated.
Exactly. And ultimately, if you end up in court, that's a game both sides play. They want to take everything you did and twist it to fit their narrative. And there can be innocent reasons for why you did what you did. In his case, he was wanting to cooperate and ended up cooperating. His statement was consistent with those minor inconsistencies that I told you about, as far as how many kids he had. How would that benefit him? He told him he had 3 or 2 when he actually had 3. But they had just asked him about his daughters, and he had 2 daughters. So his brain is misfiring. And when they followed up with, well, how many kids you got? Well, I've got 2. Well, he has 2 daughters. But all those little things can be used to sway a decision. Initially, that decision may be the charging decision. The district attorney, look at this video, how calm he is in the interview room. We think he's cold-blooded, and that can be the swaying point to make that district attorney decide to file charges. And then if a prosecutor is successful as painting you as cold and calloused, and he's almost to go to sleep here in the interview room.
Just so relaxed you could take a nap.
Yeah, the jury may get the idea that you're callous towards human life, that you're going to take a nap right after you've been involved in taking a life.
Not understanding all the physiological things taking place.
Yeah.
I was in a snowstorm once with a couple female family members, and we watched a bad accident in front of us, and I trotted out into the snow to help, and I'm like, hey, you guys call 911, tell them where we're at. We're in the town that we live in. I come back, and they're fumbling, trying to dial 911. Yeah. And then, so I'm like, I dialed, and I ran back out to do something else, and I come back, and they're trying to just describe where we're at. I'm like, we're in the town we live in, but they're like, it was right in front of us that this car ran a red light and T-boned somebody, a big crash, and thing tipped over, and so, But like that was enough for them to sit there and get fumbly with 3 digits and the street signs right there to tell them where we're at. But they, in the 30 seconds or a minute of that initial thing,
shock almost.
Yeah, they just did that. Couldn't.
If you've ever had to call 911, leaving our office one day, I drove up on a fight, and one person was getting the advantage of the other person. I'm retired now. The last thing I want to do is get in between a fight, but I felt I had a moral obligation. I'm trying to talk to a dispatcher and deal with a person. I fumbled with that same thing, because every time I would try to say where I was at, the crazy attacker would come towards me, and I would be distracted, and all that stress comes on you, and you can lock up, you can say the wrong thing, you give the wrong location. That happens all the time.
Get overloaded.
Yeah, you get. I think what do they call that?
Task saturated.
Task saturated. I've heard it of. Something overload.
Sensory overload.
Sensory overload.
Bandwidth deprivation.
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of different.
And, it's stress is almost like a drug.
Number 1, make sure you're safe.
Yes.
So, again, I don't have to call 911 while I'm in the midst of getting my head caved in with a bat.
Correct.
I got to first secure myself because that's self-defense. 2, notify 911, give them all the particulars. I'm the victim. Here's what happened. Please send medical aid.
Give them enough that they know what they're headed to.
So, what happened?
But
what's how? That's
in a
part,
very it is extreme, and that's why
I was attacked.
there's no book that says here's the proper response.
Okay.
I would want to establish I was attacked. You've established now that you're a victim. Those responding officers are going to be coming expecting to see a victim of a crime.
My name is, this is where I'm at.
My name is, this is what I'm wearing. You may or may not know where you're at. You know, if you're you travel all the time. If you're in a...
So how will I tell them if I hang up with them?
Well, that's another one that you just have to...
You guys start to figure out where you're at.
Yes, you have to figure out where you're at. If you're in Vegas and you don't know exactly where, there's going to be enough people there that eventually you're going to be able to establish. If you're out in the middle of the country.
You just brought up a point on, so this is number 2, dial 911. I'm in a group of people. I have to defend myself. I'm safe. I can now articulate, dude, do me a favor, call 911. Can I have you do it?
Yes.
Do I need to?
I think it would almost be better to have another person do it.
Okay, so as long as it's done, I could say, make sure you tell him the guy in the black shirt with the gray hair is the victim and he's armed and he's going to be over there by the soda machine when the cops get here.
Yeah.
So
I'm a witness. I'm going to stay here for the officers.
Okay.
Now keep in mind that as a witness, you don't have a Fifth Amendment right. You can't you can refuse to answer questions, but you can be compelled to testify. You can't be compelled to testify against yourself.
Against yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 3, 2 is dial that. 1 again, keep yourself safe, get yourself safe. 2, dial 911. 3,
initiate the emergency response.
So that's part of number 2.
Try to disconnect from dispatch. Call CCW Safe, or even better, take your scenario. You're alone. If you've got somebody there to assist you, you might be able to task them with it. If not, I recommend having a loved one or somebody else that has the emergency number. Say, hey, I've been involved in an incident. I'm okay. Call CCW Safe. If nothing else, we're not 911. We're not going to show up on the scene 5 minutes after an incident.
Sure.
But we get the ball rolling.
Right. People start making phone calls.
Phone calls are made. Texts go out.
Where's he at? What happened?
Don, we're reaching out to Don. Don's going, okay, that happened in Vegas. We've got these attorneys that we've used in Vegas. Let me start making sure one of them's available. So you're prepping for what's going to be needed. So the sooner we can be contacted, the better.
Okay. 4,
prepare for responding officers. Don't have a gun in your hand.
Put yourself wherever you said you were going to be.
Put yourself where you were going to be. You see the responding officers, get your hands in plain sight. If you've got your gun holstered, make sure your hands are nowhere near that holster. If you've put it on on the car or something like that, keeping your hands up, say, my firearm is in the car. Number 5, provide the initial information.
So that's all the stuff, again, that we kind of touched on.
Yeah, and it's going to be more than what you told the dispatchers, but you're still not going to be doing a in-depth interview. 6, identify the case elements to the officer, and that's, the case elements. You just tell the officer what has happened in general terms. I was attacked, which leads into identified case elements to the officer.
So it might be some physical evidence.
Could be physical evidence.
Might be
an eyewitness.
Yeah, that dude chucked a gun off the bridge. He put something in that wastebasket.
He talked to that person over there. They may be associated with them. Or that person was standing and watching when this happened. They're a witness.
Okay.
And that sort of thing.
And again, we got to do that in a way that we're not. Earlier, I left the office and decided to have a drink, and I stopped here, and me and this guy got in an argument over the Cubs game.
Yeah.
And it's not all that.
Yeah, you don't want to go in depth.
Okay. 7.
7's inform the officers of the injuries, no matter how minor. Establish that you were injured. Make sure they document those injuries.
Should you be asking to go to seek medical aid?
You know, I've heard this brought up several times. If you need medical attention, absolutely. What I have heard some trainers in some companies say, tell them you're having chest pains.
Right.
Take you to the hospital.
No matter what, like initiate that I could be in some type of grave physical danger from this event. That can be a potential landmine, in my opinion. Okay.
If you're feeling chest pains or you're feeling heart palpitations, which you may under that much stress, absolutely. But if you're just doing it because you were told to do it, and then somewhere during the course of the investigation, they find out, oh, you went to so-and-so's self-defense training, and then they go look at that, which is something we would do, and their number 3 on their list is always ask to go to the hospital, tell the officers you're having chest pains. Well, if it's not true, and they can establish it's not true, you're not a truthful person.
Mm-hmm. What else have you lied to us about?
Yeah, what else? If you've lied about that, what else? So some people encourage it as a tactic. I don't believe in being dishonest in that situation, because if next week you tell your friend, yeah, I told them I was having heart or chest pains, so they'd take me to the hospital so I didn't have to talk to them. And then he tells somebody, the next thing you know, the officers are out interviewing those, and they've got evidence that you're being dishonest. And, you know, to me, that can be significant.
Little tiny thing that might seem like to an author or a teacher, just a little value add, but it really could end up being your downfall.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe it could. That's my opinion. I don't recall ever working a case where that specifically occurred, but I can see that being a potential.
I suppose how one phrased it, hey, I was involved in this crazy violent thing. I want to go see a doctor. I got slammed all around.
I don't feel good.
Yeah.
You're going to feel, anybody that's been under a high stress situation is going to physically feel it. So I think that's fine, because that's truthful. But to grab your chest, say, oh, I'm having chest pains, wink and a nod, that's where you, I think,
put yourself in a bad position.
You have the potential of that backfiring.
How about 8?
You're the victim, act like one.
Act like the victim.
Be aware that you're probably being filmed, that people are observing you. So if you go over and light a cigarette and flick the ashes and laugh, or you're on the phone calling your buddy going, hey man, I just got involved in a shootout, ha ha ha, that could be captured. That's not normal victim behavior. So just, you're a victim, act like you're a victim.
9.
Control the information about the incident.
Social media, talking to people.
Social media, talking to people, talking to loved ones. Just control the information that is coming from you about the incident.
10.
10, provide identifying information only. And this is to the responding officers. Hey, I'm Gary Eastridge. Yeah, I live here. I need to talk to my representation before. I like the word representation because I think it sounds better than I need to talk to my lawyer. Talk to my representation, and then I'll cooperate with you guys.
You got nothing to hide, man. You say that you did this out of self-defense. Why don't you just tell us what happened? I'm just here to help you, buddy.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm so shook up. I've never experienced anything like this.
Look, man, I get it. I'm
I'm
on your
nervous.
side. Just tell me exactly what happened.
And that's exactly what, and there is some honesty there. The officers need to know what happened, but you have to protect yourself, number one, at that point. Mm-hmm. The rest of it is in law enforcement's hand.
I kind of look at it like we use the word act a few times. I say don't act right, be right. Like, where if, again, I brought this up in the previous video, the way I've looked at it, having thought about this enough, if anybody can say whatever they want, but if anybody that was involved with anything pertaining to it says, yeah, what he said is as he said it, then not that there will be no issues, but just don't leave these cracks in the dam for things to slip out.
Well, I can tell you that the responding officer who's asking you that, if they were involved in an incident, they would not talk until they had their representation. That might be the FOP or PBA or whatever association provides their legal representation, or if they happen to have an attorney that they like to use, they're not going to talk for, as we discussed, about 48 hours.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, back in my day, it wasn't that case. That was not the case. We went straight downtown, did a full interview, and I've got the report somewhere, and it doesn't make sense to me now because I was so shook and rum-dum from just not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
That interview was not a good interview. Luckily, it was the evidence, there were witnesses, there was enough information and evidence to show that it was a justifiable use of force.
Which cannot always be the case, and so keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Was it Michael Drodka? Was that the guy in Florida? Yeah, that was it, Drodka.
That's the parking lot deal?
Yeah, where he's yelling at the lady because she's parked in the handicap. Guy comes out, shoves him, falls down. He draws and shoots the guy, hits him in the heart, and he stumbles in and dies. And I always tell folks, go watch the interview that the PD did of him. The detectives bring him in, and you just watch his body language. Like, even if you've got no knowledge of the case, just watch. He wanted the detectives to think like, I'm like you. I'm out here like social justice guy, and he's got all the right phrases. You know, I was in fear for my life and blah, blah, blah. But it was like so over the top that as they listen, they're like, what's this guy's story? You know, like, what the heck is, there's more to it than this. And as you like listen, and he keeps just over explaining to let them know I did the right thing. Yeah. He said so many things that were just so weird that they looked into it. And it was very much not a justified.
And then you add to that the evidence that shows him being the aggressor towards the female, even though what he did was relatively mild. It didn't put him in a good light.
Yeah, screaming at a lady who's
screaming
in the car
at a lady. Parking in a handicapped spot is bad, and we shouldn't do it. But is this his mission in life?
Right. And now he's in, I think he got 25 years or something for it.
And you know, here you got a tax-paying citizen who made a series of bad decisions, and now he's incarcerated.
And he took a man's life.
And a young man lost his life.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about the person that he shot, but you really shouldn't lose your life over a shove or parking in a handicapped spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either side of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a tragedy all the way around.
Synopsis. We've got this body of stuff, this couple paragraphs of information. The way I look at it, like if I go to the doctor, I go there because whatever I need, I can't solve on my own. Some man or woman that's got years of experience, you guys collectively have 100 years of experience. I mean, heck, you got 73 years of yourself.
Quite a bit.
402 years on the couch over here. You guys have like over 100 years of experience.
About 150.
150 years. Okay, so, I mean, if I was trying to grow good tomatoes and I had 150 years of tomato growing experience, I would know a damn thing about growing tomatoes. So, like, you guys could have put anything in the top 10 things. These is the things that you chose. You didn't say cut your hair a certain way or this or that. You said these things. So I think that's pretty meaningful.
Well, we feel that it is. And the situation is going to dictate how each of those points, how much information you're going to give. You know, we discussed earlier about we had a member who invoked his right and didn't want to speak to law enforcement. We had law enforcement call us up and say, I need to talk to his attorney because I don't want to put him in jail.
So number 10, he didn't give them any information. So all they know is there's a bloody body and this guy.
But it was the right thing to do because with law enforcement at that point, he was taken to the police station. He was detained, was not arrested or charged with a crime, but that was coming close. So we had to make a decision. Don West, our legal team, our National Trial Counsel, had to make a decision on advising our member to give them the basics and not much else, and then we will schedule a in-depth interview once we have local counsel. And as soon as he gave them just the basic elements of him being a victim, they released him. So in that case, it worked out in his advantage to tell a little bit of what happened.
Hearing all of this stuff kind of makes me always think, I don't want to be involved in any of this stuff.
You don't.
Right. I mean, it just seems like even if you do everything right, it can still go wrong. And you could get a malicious prosecution. You could get a cop that doesn't like the way you dress or the type of truck you drive and just has it out for you.
There are so many variables. Politics, world events, what's going on in Miami might impact a decision in Oklahoma because of the Draca case.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe that's fresh and all of a sudden you have things that are similar that can impact a politician's, a district attorney. And that's, I said politician, I meant to touch on that earlier. District attorneys are politicians, they're elected officials, they answer to their constituents. So let's say Mick from Illinois is in Las Vegas and doesn't have a support network there, and the way they view an incident may not be the way that your home district attorney does. There's so many variable factors that can play into a decision.
So don't operate as you would at home because the local culture, customs, or laws might not be the same as what goes on at home.
You should know the laws of any jurisdiction you're going to carry in.
Ignorance is not
an excuse. We've heard it on TV since forever.
I didn't see the speed limit sign.
But it's knowing the local laws, knowing the politics, knowing the current events, all of those things can impact what occurs to you after an incident.
Of course, in the moment, we're not going to like weigh out, okay, I'm in Miami or I'm in Myrtle Beach or I'm in Phoenix. How should I act? If you got to defend yourself, number one was
make yourself safe.
Yeah. But the way all of this stuff plays out. And as the timeline changes, the first time I was in the West, like Wyoming, Montana, as a kid, every man had a 6-shooter and a Bowie knife.
Yeah.
I mean, within reason.
Yeah.
But you walked into a local store and that's what dudes were dressed like. And now it's guys with skinny jeans, and it's not a dig on anybody's clothing, but the things change so quickly that how somebody knew a place could change as well.
Yeah. It's making the decision to carry a firearm to protect yourself comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with a lot of responsibility. It comes with a demand for knowledge. And that's why we advocate for seeking professional training. Not only in shooting is just one element of the self-defense mindset that you're going to have to develop. You're saying, I think I have one of your shirts that says, be your own cavalry. Mm-hmm. You have to plan. You have to understand that I'm carrying this gun and I'm going to only defend myself with it. And then you have the responsibility to know the laws of the location. The politics and that sort of thing really becomes involved after an incident versus in preparing, but you need to be aware of that. We touched on earlier about a jury of your peers.
Sure.
What is a jury of your peers? It's a cross section of your community,
or
not your community,
the community you're in.
The community the incident occurs in. So if you're in Key West, it may not be the same as it is in your hometown.
Sure.
Or if you're in Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and of course, the individual, especially people in this space that tend to be lovers of freedom and the Constitution, they look at it, well, the Constitution's over everybody. I think it's important that we understand humans don't all agree, and if we, keeping that stuff in mind, I think in our previous video we talked about we have no idea what somebody's capable of. You have no idea what a juror's got in their heart, or a potential juror, and all of those things should give us pause to engage in needless activities of violence.
We posted an article on social media recently, and this topic of jury selection came up. I said, well, no problem. I'll get 12 people that think the way I do. Well, your attorney, the jury selection process is very limited. You have so many preemptory strikes, you have so many strikes for cause, but your attorney, your legal team is going to have a 4 or 5 minute, 5-10 questions to try to figure out what this person thinks. And then if they've used their preemptory challenges and they can't strike for cause, it doesn't matter what they think.
Right.
They're going to be judging your actions.
It's scary.
It is very scary. And the hardest thing I've experienced being at CCW Safe was the little over an hour waiting for Steve Maddox's jury to return.
All the work you guys had done,
all the
you've
work,
developed a relationship with this guy over all those years.
Just, he got to know him, got to like him. I consider him a good friend. And to realize that as the clock is ticking during jury deliberations, when that jury's deciding his fate, 12 people are going to make one of two decisions. Steve's going to walk out of that courthouse a free man, or he's going to prison for the rest of his life. And it was one of the most emotional things I've experienced. I feel the emotion just now.
I'm looking at you right now. I was going to say, I can see you getting a little emotional about it.
It is, and if you've never waited for a jury, and I did it a lot at the district attorney's office.
But they weren't a buddy or somebody that you were emotionally invested in.
Yeah, and they're deciding the rest of his life.
That's heavy.
It is very heavy, and that's why these little landmines that I talk about, you want to avoid those.
Which that's the wrap up here.
Yeah.
Like that point, that everything comes down to 12 random people that don't know anything about you and they want to hurry up and finish this crap up so they can get back to their job and their kids.
12 people that couldn't get out of jury duty.
Right. I think a nice way for us to make sure that the individual has this stuff burned in their brain every time they're on the range or doing some dry fire, they can go on your website if they have a phone or a computer. This is in one of your articles.
Yes.
They can print this even, throw it in their range bag, and as they're loading mags, cleaning up the range, cleaning their gun, they can have this on the wall in their gun room, and they can cipher through this.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about it with their kids that they're teaching. They can talk about it with their training partners and commiserate on these things so that it's not just something I read one time.
Yes.
I dig that.
Yeah.
So,
and it's easily found on our website. Just go to the news section. It's searchable.
what would they
10
search?
things.
Okay.
That's all you have to type in, and you should pull up the article.
Or you should have taken notes during this amazing discussion, and then you would have had them all.
There you go.
Gary, how do people find you, CCW Safe? How do they get in touch? How do they sign up? All that good stuff.
It's real easy. Our website's easy to remember, ccwsafe.com. You can email support@ccwsafe.com. Answer any questions. Feel free to call me direct if you want. 405-724-8960. That's
your
my
cell?
direct number. No, I don't give out my cell.
What is your grinder
Anymore.
profile?
It's two-guy.
Grinder profile.
Oh, profile.
6-shooter. I hope you guys dug this. If it seems like the stuff that we talked about, we reiterated and repeated, that was for a reason. I want to make sure that there was nothing that was left unsaid, and I want to make sure that there was nothing that we didn't drill into from a couple of angles to make sure that we all had a good take on it. Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Mick.
Appreciate you.
Enjoyed it.
Be well, don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. Where's that JJ guy? I'm going to put some oil on him. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
I said I got me some gunfighter gun law. Gunfighter gun law, baby. Gunfighter gun law, no more gunfighter blues. Made in the USA, amazing lubricity, 100% synthetic, baby. So it's gonna last you longer. So go on CarryTrainer.com and order yourself some gunfighter gun or gunfighter lube to get rid of your gunfighter blues. I said go on and order yourself some gunfighter